Well, we'll talk about
Anyway,
Bret Hart right now because in January of
it'll come back.
'92, you
Oh yeah,
beat
I'm sorry.
you beat Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title because he on TV he had
Exactly.
103 temperature, but in reality he was negotiating underneath the table with WCW as Intercontinental Champion, as he would do in '97 as the WWF Champion.
You're blowing my mind now. That's what I was going at there. It was like Bret was my best friend everywhere outside the ring and everything got along good, but Bret was a very hard man to do business with. Like, so Bret, I think at the time, he didn't want to drop the belt to Piper, the Intercontinental. So
Yeah.
they used me for an intermediate, like, because, I was only 2 days champion, the Intercontinental champion for 2 days. I beat Bret, like you said, because he said he was sick. He had to announce that he was sick. So I beat nobody. I beat a sick guy. And then the next thing, is Piper beats me. And so I had it for 2 days. But here's the funny thing about it. 35 years later, 33 years later, I'm going in Comic Cons. I was in England last month, in Los Angeles last week. I'm going everywhere. I'm going to Philadelphia next week. I'm going, and everywhere I go, people come with the Toys R Us dolls and the figurines. And there I got the belt around my waist. And a lot of people say, you were the greatest Intercontinental champion, when they should know that I was the shortest lived ever Intercontinental champion, but it made an impact.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like, that people remember me as the Intercontinental champion and I was only there for 2 days. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a funny story. When I won the belt that night, I called a newspaper guy in Montreal because I always marketed myself. Like you said, we got to market ourselves, So I called this newspaper guy in Montreal. He's just a stud. He's got a full page in the Montreal paper. Like, there's 2 million people that watch his page every day. So he's a friend of mine. So I called him up. I said, Andre. So I called him up at 11 o'clock at night. But he's an old man, like he's like 60, 65 years old. So he's sleeping since 9, I guess. So anyways, I call him
Probably 7.
So I call him at So I call him. I'm being nice. So I call him at 11. And I call him at 11, and I wake him out of bed, and I said, Andre, I said, Jacques, I said, I'm in Springfield, Illinois, and Massachusetts. I'm in Springfield, Massachusetts, and I just won the Intercontinental title. I said, I'm going to send you a picture. Is that okay? So he says like this. He says, Jesus Christ, Jacques. It's 11 o'clock at night. He says, listen, I got hockey tomorrow. I got that. He says, call me in a few days. I said, no. I said, I can't. I can't, because I knew in a few days I wouldn't be champion anymore. So anyway, so he put the picture in the paper. But that was just funny because, I only had 2 days to put the picture in the paper. But so it was a great moment. And it's so funny because even my students in my wrestling school, I had a wrestling school for 20 years before COVID. And then all my students, they bought me the Intercontinental title. Everybody relates to me as being a champion, an Intercontinental champion, when I was only just a hand switch from Piper to Bret, from Bret to Piper,
Well, I think because at the time, if you look at championships, it didn't change hands so often. So if anytime you had it for a day or 2 days or a week or a month, it didn't matter because you were Intercontinental champion. Because it wasn't like everyone became champion at the time. Mr. Perfect, Texas Tornado, Ultimate Warrior, Bret Hart, British Bulldog, Shawn Michaels. You go through the list. It's very short for those like 10 years that we call the golden era of wrestling, from like 85 to like 95. So you being on that list will forever be remembered as the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time. With the shock stick, you fighting Piper with the shock stick and him clearly wearing 2 shirts, and then him taking off shock proof. That was my first ever wrestling event I watched on TV.
Really?
Oh yeah,
that was my idea. I got to tell you,
that's the greatest thing ever.
I wanted to protect my business, my gimmick, because no one had ever gotten up from the shock stick. So I came up with that idea, like, say, hey, I got an idea, and I proposed it to him, and he loved it, So when I gave the shock, and then he gets up in the anti-shock there, or shock proof on his shirt there, they really liked the idea. So that protected my gimmick too. So it didn't take anything away from my shock stick. It didn't take any credibility away. But Piper wasn't an easy guy to work with, I got to tell you.
So, but you mentioned Bret Hart being hard to work with. Why do you think Bret Hart?
No.
Well, why didn't business-wise? Why didn't Bret Hart, you think, want to lose to Piper? I get it. Good guy. As a fan interaction, who you cheering for?
I think Bret just wanted to be as important as Piper, and I think Bret there was a battle of egos and a battle at the time, and stuff like that. But there's a difference now. Bret was a great guy to work with in the ring. Great guy to work. I'd love to work with him every night. It's on the outside politics that was a little harder. On the opposite, Piper was a great guy outside the ring. He great guy, but in the ring, man, I'm telling you, he was a machine. Like, you know, he wasn't a guy that was, maybe it was Vince also that asked him to do that because he was just, or whatever had happened, but he wasn't very generous, you know, towards me. When I got in the ring, I had to fight for everything I could get. Like for the minute I had him down for a second where I could just barely take the mic and scream, "I am the Mountie," he was up on his feet again. Like, you know, he wasn't a very generous guy. But I love the guy, you know, he's a very nice guy. But a lot of the guys, and sometimes I ask myself, you know, because when we came in the business in '86, Raymond and I, we had one philosophy was like, whatever the Vince asks, yes, sir, yes, sir, and yes, sir. We were called yes men. And then you had other guys that sometimes were hard, like harder guys that wouldn't want to do jobs or wouldn't want to do things. And we'd look at them like, what kind of idiots? Like, and now I'm starting to look back at it a little differently. I'm starting to look at it like maybe we were the idiots.
Maybe you shouldn't be saying yes to everything.
Maybe I shouldn't have said yes because all the time. Maybe that wasn't the right way of doing business. Like, you know.